Welcome back to our channels, Warriors. We are still growing. If you haven't had the paletero, smash that subscribe button. Go ahead and have them smash it right now. Today we have a banger of an interview. All right, none other than Chris Camozzi. What's up, dude? How you doing?
No, Mo, I'm good, man. Thank you so much for having me
Cool.
on.
Yeah. Hey, congrats on your win. Also on Saturday, man. Bare knuckle fighting.
Yeah. Oh man, it was a fun one. It was I never miss the opportunity, if a big show comes to town and I don't even have to travel, then I like to get in on it. And I had one with Bare Knuckle here in October and they came back because it was the biggest crowd they'd ever had. So they did their first pay-per-view here, which was BKFC 41, and
Yeah.
it was a sold-out crowd. And I mean, they would pay-per-views worldwide. It was number one trending event that day.
Awesome, dude. Why don't you give people your background, like where you're from, give us your height and your weight, man, because you're a big dude.
Yeah, so I'm let's see, I think I'm 6'3", about 220 is what I walk around at. I fight at 205. I used to fight at middleweight, which is 185, and that cut, as you get older and stuff, cutting weight gets harder. And
Yeah.
I just like getting bigger, it sucks having to cut down. But yeah, I'm mostly from Denver, Colorado. I grew up in the Bay Area, but I moved here when I was 12. So I spent most of my life here in Denver. My dad was an Oakland police officer and then transferred here to Denver. And so he brought the family. And then from there, let's see, I started training. I grew up wrestling, through high school and stuff. And then I got into jiu-jitsu and kickboxing or Muay Thai at the same time, right about 18 years old. And it's kind of a cool story because I just went in, I was working a job I hated. I went to college for a semester. It wasn't for me. I was working a job that wasn't going anywhere. And one of my buddies from wrestling hit me up and was like, "Hey, I started going to this gym. You should come check it out." And he said it was jujitsu and stuff. And I was kind of like, "What was that?" And I grew up watching the UFC and everything, but I didn't realize that there were just like gyms you could go to and learn this stuff.
Right.
And I went in just wanting to work out for fun. And dude, from day one going in there, I started going every day, and I was just hooked on it. And I didn't realize that there were fights, like local fights and stuff. I just thought guys like kind of signed up and went into the UFC. I didn't know there was like regional circuits, local. And the coach asked me if I was interested in fighting, and he could get me on a card. So I was like, "Yeah, let's try it." And then, man, the rest is history. From there, I was just
Wow.
like, boom, boom, boom.
So going from Oakland to Colorado, was that a big culture shock or any change differences that you noticed?
Definitely the weather.
Oh yeah, yeah, for sure, man.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of the cold, but it was the first time I saw snow was coming here. I lived in, let's see, Alameda and then Concord.
Oh,
So we didn't fully live in Oakland.
what
Obviously, my mom didn't want to live there.
what about growing up as the son of a police officer? Was it like a strict household? Considering your cops with a your pops with a cop.
I would say so. So my dad ended up, my parents split, and I didn't see him for a while. Once, let's see, how old I was, probably 12-ish or whatever. We didn't live in Denver very long. So then I didn't see him for a while. So I grew up with my mom mostly up, all the way through adulthood and stuff. So uh, single mother and three kids, and we stayed busy, man. We kept her running all over the place, unfortunately for her.
Oh yeah,
And but yeah, it was great, man. I got good values growing up, from my dad and my mom. And
nice.
then I always say my mom's kind of the one that taught me how to be a man, though.
That's what's up, dude. That's what's up. Sometimes they have to
Yeah,
take on that role, you know. So shout out to all the moms out there that take on that role.
yeah.
You wrestled in high school. That's kind of a big jump to go from wrestling to competing to fighting. Was that always the goal to compete?
No, so when I went, I was just going to like work out and do something different.
Yeah.
And that's when the coach told me about like the local shows and stuff. So I was super fortunate because the gym that I walked into, I didn't research it or anything. It was just the one in my neighborhood. But the guy who owned it, he was only like 5 years older than me, but he was in the UFC like 20s. He was a black belt in jiu-jitsu. He had like 50 fights or something. So like super knowledgeable, where there's a lot of gyms out there where people are not the most experienced and they or lie. I mean, there's so many gyms out there. There's a page called McDojo Life. I don't know if you've ever seen on YouTube where they kind of highlight these fake gyms and
Yeah.
coaches that lie, tell all these people all these fake things. But for me, like it was just by luck that I walked into like a legit gym. Otherwise, I probably would have ended up, who knows.
What year time frame was that, if you could recall?
That was about 2005.
So the gyms, there's not as many. Like you said, there's probably one on every street corner now, in every shopping mall.
Yeah. Yeah. And it wasn't like super common. I mean, I don't think the Ultimate Fighter 1 had come out yet. And it wasn't this crazy thing. Now everybody does jiu-jitsu. I feel like everybody
Right.
trains some kind of martial art. But back then everybody was like, "You're doing what?" Like trying to explain it to them. They had no idea.
So jiu-jitsu, is that something you fell in love with right away, or did it grow on you?
No, I mean, I loved it, you know, going from wrestling and then being bored with just kind of adult life and working and stuff. It felt like I was getting back to like the team aspect of stuff. You know, I'd go in and just be grappling with guys, and wrestling was still fresh in my mind. So to me, it was wrestling, but then I got to like choke people and learn submissions and do all that stuff.
Does wrestling and jiu-jitsu go hand in hand? Is there some differences? Did you find yourself trying like with bad habits, or do they kind of go hand in hand?
A little bit. So yes and no, because in wrestling, you never want to go to your back, right? You do everything you can to avoid going to your back. And then when you go to jiu-jitsu and you do that, so like if you get taken down, you want to go like belly down in wrestling. Well, in jiu-jitsu, they're going to get on your back and choke you. So that took a little bit of breaking the habit and getting used to like going to your back and working your guard and stuff like that. But wrestlers are still some of the best to like cross over to MMA because they pick up everything so quick.
For sure, for sure. Did how many
Um,
times?
Sorry, can I pause you 1 second?
So yeah, dude, I was just about to ask you while you were training right there. How many times a day were you training?
At that time, just once, right? So I would go to work, get off work, go to the gym, and then as I progressed and got more like hooked on it, I switched jobs and I started working nights, um, bouncing at clubs so that I could train all day. So then I started going like 2 to 3 times a day once I switched jobs. And then from there, I would just go to work at night, sleep, wake up early, train, go to work. So there wasn't a lot of sleep, but I
Yeah.
was loving it.
While you were bouncing, did you get to practice any of your moves? Any run-ins like that?
Yeah, quite a bit.
I bet, man.
uh, because this time this was 2000 and 2006 or so. I'd say the laws and everything were a little bit different, so it was a little bit roadhouse-ish. I worked at strip clubs, so
Ooh,
it was always
there you
yeah,
go.
they get a little rowdy at night, and yeah, it felt like, I don't know, 3 or 4 times a week at least there was either fights with us and people or breaking up fights. And jiu-jitsu definitely comes in handy. You're not supposed to choke anybody, obviously. There are some stories there where it wasn't me, but
Right.
some people had. But yeah, I mean, jiu-jitsu is great for all parts of life. So I felt like it was just like training, because there's certain ways, like wrist locks, there's certain ways
Right.
to tie people up and get them out the door.
So with that the policy, they told you guys, hey, don't choke. You guys can do pretty much free for all, just don't choke people out.
Yeah, because I think that I want to say that's like nationwide. I'm not positive. I mean, it happens, but
Yeah.
for instance, I had a manager. This was years later because I worked there for a while. He we're breaking up a fight, and he grabbed a guy around the neck and was kind of like rear naked choking him, and the guy ended up dying. So the manager that I had went to prison for a minute for manslaughter because you're not supposed
Wow.
to. That was near the end of me working at the clubs because I was like, man, I don't make enough money for this when you have to start going to court and all this other stuff that can happen. So yeah, as far as I know, I want to say it's like a nationwide thing though that chokes. The guy was on like drugs and everything, come to find out, but it didn't
Yeah.
matter. They still choked.
Since we're on the subject, I don't know if you watch the news or whatever, especially when it comes to law enforcement. There's like you said, it's a big deal now. The chokeholds are absolutely a no-go and against policy.
Yeah,
Do you follow that at all?
yeah, quite a bit. I mean, I'm like an old man at heart. I read the world news, local news, all of that every night in bed. I'm scrolling through. I don't know why, but nothing ever is good on the news, but I still read it every day.
That's what's up, dude. So, like, as you know, I did 16 years with the California Department of Corrections, man. That's working in a prison, surrounded by the meanest of the mean, man. Guys as tall as you and as big as you know what I mean, built. So,
Yeah.
what can somebody do that's brand new, that's never where can somebody turn to look for like to get their foot in the door when it comes to jiu-jitsu or martial arts? Somebody with no knowledge at all.
Yeah, the cool thing is, especially if you have a job like that, working in prisons, law enforcement, any of that, it could save your life, right? So I always suggest finding a gym near you, do your research. People watching this, you can message me or whatever too. And I know people in almost every state now, almost every city, I would say, or if I don't, like, it's a small community, but it's huge at the same time. So like everybody kind of knows everybody, or at least knows of them. So if you're watching this, feel free to message me. You can ask me about your area and gyms. Gyms being number one, and just put the time in. Go in with no ego. And then outside of that, I own my own app. It's called Jiu-Jitsu on the Go. It's not just jiu-jitsu anymore, but it's a training app where you can learn from home. You're still going to need like a partner or somebody to work it with you, but it's step by step on how to do all different kinds of jiu-jitsu. We have self-defense on there. We have MMA stuff, wrestling, kickboxing, Muay Thai, a ton of it. But in the end, like, you still have to do it, right? It's a feeling thing more than anything.
Right.
I don't like when people feel like they can read something, at least in a physical world, like read something and be like, oh, I know how to do it. You got
Right.
to try it over and over. Practice it 1,000 times.
Right. So, okay. So now that the folks know where to find you and where to get started, I want you to put us into the mindset of a fighter. Physical preparation. How do you physically prepare for a fight or keep your body at tip-top condition?
The first thing, first and foremost, is like, it's a common saying, but get comfortable being uncomfortable, right?
Oh, yeah.
Because fighting, jiu-jitsu, all of that, like, it's never perfectly comfortable. No part of it is, but the more that you can control your emotions and be able to like hone in, because you have to be able to think clear. I mean, I'm sure your job was just like that too. You have to be able to think clear in the chaos and be able to make the right decisions. So that is fighting, that's fighting, that's grappling, that's being a prison guard, being a cop. The cooler you can keep your mind and just stay sharp and not let your emotions take over, the better the outcome will be, because that's when you rely on like training that you've done.
Right.
Now, the training also meant to, like I said, do it 1,000 times. Those reps make it muscle memory. If somebody grabs me by the throat, I know, like, there's 10 different things I could do. And it's like the first one that I react to is the one I'm going to do. But it's from those reps and then just being comfortable, like not panicking. And like, you still have to have your wits about you, if that makes sense.
Man, it's kind of crazy to hear you say that, because that's the same thing. I was also in the military, the army, and it's the same thing, man. You have to be cool in the chaos. And we would do things like sprint and gas out burpees and then shoot a tactical range. So you're able to
Yeah.
shoot properly under stress. But I never put two and two together. It's the same thing with fighting, man.
It is. Yeah. I mean, because like if say you're just boxing,
Right.
you have to be able to think clearly while somebody's trying to hit you, slipping, moving, see what's coming next. I can't just focus on one thing, even if I get hit. So I train a lot of people too. And one thing I tell them, even pad work, right? If
Yeah.
they mess up the comp on the pads and then people like throw their hands up and like, oh, I messed up. You got to pretend like you didn't mess up. Act
Correct.
like it didn't happen, because you have to just keep going. If you go into a fight and you mess up a combo and then you're like, oh, shoot. And that guy's already hitting you back, you can't stop. It's
Yeah.
like a Bob Ross style. It wasn't a mistake. It was a happy accident. Just keep rolling with it.
Train like you fight, man, as they say. What about
Yeah,
diet?
exactly.
What about diet? You got a pretty strict diet, or is it important to maintain a clean diet for the most part?
Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, I eat pretty well all year round. Obviously,
Nice.
we'll go out to dinner and cheat a little bit and everything. I don't follow like a super strict diet, but
Yeah.
I still do, like a lot of protein. I do meat, vegetables, and like complex carbs, stuff like that, like sweet potatoes, things that are healthy for you, white rice. Once you get like a routine down, I feel like it's pretty easy to keep. Starting is the hardest part, right?
Yep.
You
Yep.
know, and but yeah, from there, I'm fortunate enough because my girlfriend, we live together. She does nutrition programs for people, so she eats cleaner than anybody I've ever seen. So we don't really have a lot of crap in the house anyway.
Yeah.
But she helps me a lot with the nutrition and stuff.
I got a 4-year-old daughter, man. It's tough. You got Oreos, you got, Rice Krispie treats. We got kind of, the whole things I got to stay away from, man. So,
Yeah,
so I'm taking its skill set. What about strength? Does strength play a part in fighting, or is it okay? Hey, you could be the strongest guy, but you could also get your ass whooped.
yeah. So like a big misconception is people think like the biggest, strongest guys are the toughest. And man, like some of the guys I've come across in the past, like the skinny, lanky guys,
Oh,
are actually very strong. But I think technique over everything, right? Now, if you're fighting professionally like me, strength becomes a factor if you and I are matched up. We're pretty equal in jiu-jitsu and in boxing and everything else. Everything's pretty equal. Then the stronger person will probably prevail. Or the cooler head, the person who it's all in the mind. But
right.
muscle and strength does matter, but not to as much as people realize. I mean, I've trained with bodybuilders and stuff, and that we call them beach muscles because the muscles in the weight room don't always equate to like physical strength. I've been able to throw some of those guys around on the mat, and you see them lift all this weight, but it's not functional strength either.
Right. What about endurance? Endurance wise, like people that run marathons, is it important to have your wind up and your lung capacity up?
Yeah, I lean more towards endurance than I do strength too. Now, again, perfect world, you want all of them, but
Yeah.
I tell people, even street fights and stuff, the person who lasts the longest is going to win. The guys I train that go into their first amateur fight or something, I'm like, cardio, 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 because nerves get to people. That takes some of your cardio. The anxiety of, being hit, fighting, that takes a toll on your cardio. So the bigger threshold you have for your cardio, the longer you can last. I mean, I've had guys go into amateur fights that weren't the most technical, but due to their endurance and being able to stay calm, can end up beating somebody who's technically better than them.
Right. So what are some of the things you do for cardio or endurance? Like some of your workouts?
Yeah, so there's two different kinds of cardio too, and I'll mess up the names, so I won't even. I'm going to put
Just
them in layman's terms, but
wing it, man.
yeah,
We're good.
there's a baseline cardio, right? So I'll do cardio. We call it like LSD, like long, slow distance. So if I'm running, I'll run for an hour, but I'll run like conversation pace. Like I should be able
Right.
to talk on the phone. I'm not huffing and puffing. You're just moving. It's really slow, but that cardio is what builds your baseline like threshold, right? That's important for recovery. So between rounds, that's the kind of cardio that my body will tap into to recover. And then you have like your sprint cardio, right? So it doesn't have to exactly mean go out and sprint, though I do. I'll run stairs, bag work, mitt work, stuff like that. That really it mimics a sprint. Your heart rate gets up really fast, and then you have to be able to get it back down. So two different kinds of cardio, right? Call it sprint training and then jogging. Now, whatever you do with those, like I do Versa climber sprints, the stair things,
Yeah.
those 30 seconds on, 30 seconds off. That's sprint training. Rowers, um, and then slow distance or like long slow distance could be like cycling. I usually use a Peloton. I got to say my knees are not the best anymore after like years of running, doing jiu-jitsu, all this stuff. So I running for me kind of like kills my knees and stuff.
How old are you, dude, if you don't mind me asking?
I'm 36, so I'm not super old. Athletically, I'm getting older. I
I
just always
hear
tell
you.
people, yeah, it's not the year of the car, it's the mileage.
I'm 38, man. It seemed like after 25, it was just all downhill for me, man.
Yeah, I feel you.
But I bring it up because you're 36, I'm 38, and yet we still continue to be, at the best shape that we possibly can. I mean, we can always strive for more, right? But we see other people that are way younger than us that kind of just let themselves go, man.
Yeah, 100%. And I think like, you can preach on health and all that stuff, but you're doing yourself just a disservice in general. Like we have all these options. Like we live in America where we have all these things at our fingertips. I understand buying like organic food all the time is expensive, but there are anybody that ever tells me they don't really have the money to diet is completely wrong, because you can buy, I mean, when I was broke, I used to go buy hamburger, right? Just a bunch of like ground up hamburger, and I would
Yeah.
cook it all, cook it up, put it in Tupperware. You could buy broccoli, you could buy vegetables are cheap. It doesn't have to be organic. Sure, that helps. White rice. I mean, you could get 5 pounds of white rice for pretty cheap. Eat
Yeah.
meat, vegetables, rice. If you eat that every meal, like there's no way you're getting fat.
Dude, canned chicken, canned green beans, tuna. I mean, we're not really eating for taste, but for performance.
Yeah, and even then, like man, there's spices now that are like
Yeah.
don't put sodium and stuff in them, so you don't have to load up with salt. And there's so many things out there. Anybody that thinks that they don't have the money to eat healthy is just not willing to put in the work and like find it. That's the hard truth, because you can
Right.
find it.
I think people need to hear the hard truth, man, for sure. How much
Yeah,
water do you take? You hydrate? You stay pretty hydrated?
yeah. I try to put at least a gallon a day, sometimes
Damn.
more.
Yeah.
Um, I don't do it so much anymore, and now it's just like repetition. I'm so used to just drinking water all day long, but I used to carry around like a gallon of water, and I made it like a challenge every day. Like I'm finishing that before I go to bed. And it's really, if you're working out a few times a day, that's not that hard at all.
No, not at all. Are you the type that wakes up super early?
I do now. I didn't always, but yeah. I mean, I'm up probably 6 a.m. every day, sometimes earlier.
Nice, nice. What about mindset? Do you do anything to prepare you mentally before a fight, like yoga, meditation, anything along those lines?
I do. In the last few fights, I just started doing some like hypnosis type stuff, even.
Hell
So
yeah.
it's called hypnosis. When I first heard about it, I was like, yeah, yeah, yeah. I wouldn't, I don't know if it's like hypnotized, but it's kind of like a meditation, right? There's a guy that I do Zoom things with, and then he sends you the recording too. So then I listen to that over and over. Like we've done ones on like fight night, and that's from waking up to showing up to the arena. It's just like envisioning winning over and over, right? Because I am a big person on like manifesting what you want, at least like positive mindset, right?
Right.
Now, I can't sit here and blow it up and manifest something that's like unrealistic that I'm not working for, but focusing on winning, and leading up to fights, I just tell myself like, I'm gonna knock this dude out. I'm gonna knock this dude out, or I'm gonna do this, or I'm gonna do that. And it's always, whether I say it out loud or I lip it or it's in my head, I replace any negative thoughts with like positive things like that too.
I'm glad you're saying all this, dude. And I'm asking you all these questions for a reason, man, because it's all about mindset, preparation, hard work, and dedication, bro. There's so much parallels to the successful people in life, and they all do the same routines pretty much, man. And you just hit
Yeah.
all of them.
Yeah, totally. I mean, and I could be way better at it. I mean, if you
Correct.
look at some of the billionaires out there, most like high level CEOs and stuff are almost like um, obsessive about things. Like they just constantly think about it. Like I know a lot of big time athletes, NFL players and stuff, and the great ones are. I was just having this conversation earlier today. The great ones are like obsessive about it. Like they want to be perfect. They know they won't be perfect, but they keep like dangling that carrot, right? Of
Right.
like perfect.
No, I can
You take
tell.
guys like
Oh, go ahead.
go. Oh, I was gonna
Uh,
say you take guys like Kobe, who was known to after games he would stay like 3 hours shooting free throws in the gym, and they'd have to kick him out just over and over and over because he was obsessed with winning.
Yeah, no, I can tell you have that mindset, dude, and it's important to have. It's something I thrive for as well. And a motivating factor, like I said, I got a 4-year-old daughter, man, so I'm trying to provide shelter for her, protection, and food on the table, man. That'll motivate somebody.
Yeah, and not even just that, like you want to be able to do things with your daughter and be like
Right,
fit enough. I don't know if she wants to go kayaking, or if she wants to start hiking 14ers and trails and stuff. It would be real depressing for you to be like, Dad can't do that.
right.
You know, you are right. Kids should be a big motivating factor, but also just for yourself.
Hell yeah, dude.
Too many people look for an outside motivation when really, like, you should just want it for yourself.
I'm glad you said that, man. Internally.
Yeah.
So, talk to me about your first amateur fight. Was it amateur prior to your professional fight when you first got into, what was it, a cage? Walk us through that.
This one, so it was an MMA fight, but it was in a boxing ring.
Okay.
I still remember it pretty well. Actually, Yeah, it wasn't a boxing ring. And it was pretty crazy. I fought my first amateur fight. I think I'd been training for like six or 8 months. Super green, didn't know a ton, but my coach thought it was good enough to get in there, and I did. And I actually ended up losing a decision. It was a crazy fight though, just like kind of back and forth. Um, Sometimes I still think about it. It bothers me. I'm like, I should have won that fight because this guy, I knocked out some of his teeth.
Oh
He
man.
threw up in the ring after, like he was dead, and literally like vomited in the ring after, and lost a split decision. So
Wow. Wow, dude.
can't get that one. Right after that, man, I was hooked. But that also made me realize like I need to get better. I need to get my cardio better. I need this. Like I didn't just take that and do the same routine on the next one. That made me start like really focusing in on like, here's where I need to get better because I want to do this.
You're right. Making those adjustments, right? Doing something, seeing where you could work on it, and making those adjustments and attacking them.
Yeah, absolutely. Because again, there's a lot of people that get stagnant with things, or if you are good at something, they're like, well, I'm better than everybody else I know at it. I'm good. When really you want to just keep striving to get better and better and better yourself.
For sure, dude. Now, was that a local fight? Was it a local fighter? Did you guys know each other at all when you stepped in the ring?
It was a local fight. I didn't know him. So back then there was like no tape or anything on anybody.
Yeah.
Um, I can't even remember if there was much on like YouTube. I didn't know what the guy looked like or anything. So not
You
till
didn't?
weigh-ins.
Okay.
No, I had no idea. Like, was he tall, short? And I fought at heavyweight too. I didn't cut any weight. I just showed up at like, I think I was like 208, and the weight class maximum was 265. So he was a bit bigger than me. And somebody asked me this the other day too. I don't actually know why I didn't just fight light heavyweight, which is 205.
Yeah.
I just did heavyweight. And yeah, so at weigh-ins, I was like looking around, like, is that the guy? I'm looking at bigger guys, like, is that the guy? No clue until they call your name. You get on the scale, and then I'm like, okay, here's who I'm fighting. And he was like a big, like ripped up guy. I think he was an army guy. And yeah, we had a great fight, and I haven't heard from him in years. But once I got in the UFC and stuff, he'd send me some messages, and it sounded like he was doing real good.
I'm curious to know when you saw him, were you scared? Were you nervous? Did you underestimate him? What goes through your head at that time?
I can't fully remember, but I would like to, not proud to say it, but I was young and like,
Oh
you
yeah,
still have that
I got him.
cockiness. Like
I got him.
I've been training a bit. I know what I'm doing. I didn't account for like the other guy's been training too. I was just like, well, he doesn't even know like what I've been doing. And I don't remember if I was very nervous. I'm sure I probably was, but I was more just like too cocky.
Are you normally like a risk taker, man? That takes a lot of balls to step into the ring with somebody, especially not knowing what they look like.
Yeah. I mean, I
You
like the adrenaline rush things. I've always liked danger and excitement and stuff. Even as a kid, I was always doing stuff I shouldn't be, like, getting the ladder out of the garage, going behind the house to get on the house so I could jump off the roof. And yeah, I'm sure I gave my mom a heart attack a lot as a kid. I was always getting stitched up or messed up doing something stupid.
What about the pain factor? Did that discourage you? Did it motivate you? I mean, that's painful.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm fortunate enough to have like a pretty high pain tolerance, I would think. Because I mean, I've broken bones and
Man.
been fine. Like nothing's really ever put me down. I mean, in high school I fractured my femur, um, not broken through, but I cracked it. Like a hairline fracture, whatever they called it. And I didn't go to the doctor for like a week and kept playing football, but my leg was just like twitching in class and shaking all the time. And finally, my mom's like, "You're going to the doctor." Then I came back from the doctor with crutches because they're like, "You need to be on crutches. Like your bone is splitting towards your knee. The more you walk on it, run on it,
Man.
you're making that crack bigger." So I came back from the doctor like midday with crutches, and everybody thought I was faking it. And I was like, "I don't want these things, but I have to have them." And they're like, "You didn't
Right.
break your leg." I think I've always had a pretty high pain tolerance, though.
Cool. No, I'm tracking, man. How did the UFC come about? Did you contact them? Did they contact you?
So I went on the Ultimate Fighter. So I was on season 11 of the Ultimate Fighter. I was an alternate for season 7, so early on. Um, I was in Vegas while they filmed, but nobody missed weight or got hurt on the first fights, so they sent me back home. So when season 11 came around, the producers called me and were like, "Do you still want to be on the show? Like, you're pretty much on the show, but you're going to come out and do the interviews and stuff again." But I didn't have to try out or anything. They already knew who I was and almost put me on. So I went out, did the interviews and stuff, and then was on season 11. And I was only on a short period because it was Tito Ortiz and Chuck Liddell were the coaches, which is really cool. You know, they were like my idols.
For sure.
And we had to fight to get into the house, but we didn't know that in the beginning. But I kind of figured it out when I was in Denver at the airport flying to Vegas. I saw that there was a return ticket booked. So I was like, okay, I must be fighting to get in the house. Because some seasons they did that. You show up and have to fight, and the winners get in. And then other seasons, everybody picked was just in the house. So when I saw that return ticket, I started like mentally preparing, called my coach. I'm like, I know I'm going to have to fight. So you're either going to see me in a couple of days, or if you don't see me, you know I'm on the show. And I fought a guy that I had become friends with from Ohio. And we had, let's see, the Ultimate Fighter, it was 2 rounds, right, for the first fight to get into the house. And if it's split after those 2 rounds, then there's a sudden death round. So ours was the only one, I think, that went to the 3rd round.
Man.
And it was brutal. I broke his orbital, and then he broke my jaw, come to find out. So I made it in the house, went in, was training for about a week and a half. And every time I was sparring, you know, I'd get hit and I would just be like, man, like grab my face. And finally the producers noticed that it was going on. So they took me to the doctor, and I had a fracture in my jaw here. So I wasn't able to continue. They couldn't sanction me to fight anymore on that season. So I got sent home.
Man, dude.
And then they called. Yeah, it was devastating. You know, the season's out there. You can buy it. And people have asked me before, because there's a point when Dana calls everybody into the training center, and then he calls my name, and I don't know that I'm going home or anything. We didn't talk about it before. It was all live on TV. He's just like, you're going to have to go home. I'm sorry. So I went home really bummed out. I had quit my job before going and everything.
Man.
Came back home, hadn't heard anything, and then they called me back to be on the finale since I hadn't lost. So they gave me a 1-fight deal on the Ultimate Fighter finale in Vegas, and then I won that fight. So then I got a contract.
Cool. So it was a finale from that season?
Yeah, it was. The main event was maybe Keith Jardine and Matt Hamill, something like that.
Yeah, nice.
Cool. It was really cool. It was at the Palms, and that was my first, you know, I'd had other televised fights, but that was, you're fighting in Vegas at the Palms for the UFC on Spike TV. So
yeah, what was going through your mind, man? I mean, you started in high school. You started in 05 doing the jiu-jitsu. You were grinding, and finally you win, man, and you're in. How did that make you feel?
Oh, it was amazing, man. I think I was the second fight of the, I want to say night, but it was daytime, because the preliminary fights back then started really early. I think I fought at like 2:00 in the afternoon.
Man.
And so I won, knew that I was staying in the UFC, and I had a bunch of friends come out. So of course, you know, I'm in Vegas. I just started partying, and I was like, oh, I've made it, kind of thing.
Hell yeah.
But then, you know, I got home, and that's when like the work started, and I was able to have a long career with the UFC. I ended up having, I think it was 20 fights with them.
Nice, dude.
I got to travel the world. And once I left the UFC, then I started bouncing around to some other crazy organizations.
How'd you end up in the one you're current in right now?
Bare knuckle.
Yep.
So let's see. You know, they'd offered me a few fights over the past few years. It never really worked out. It wasn't like the money I was looking for, and I was making more money in MMA. And then let's see. I was with a promotion called PFL a few years ago. So the Professional Fighters, which is on ESPN. I left there, and then they made me an offer that was really good, and they were coming to Denver. So I was like, all right, I'm in. Let's do this. You know, it's going to be something different. I'd never boxed competitively before. I've always trained it. And yeah, bare knuckle boxing is not like regular boxing either, but I love it. It's been fun.
Dude, like, come on, man. You go from UFC with these padded, and there's not much padding, but how is it just to go to straight? That has to be nuts, bro.
It is a little bit, but I just like again, I try not to think about it, right? Like when I first signed with them before I'd fought, people were like, "Well, what do you think the difference is?" And how's that going to feel? And I was like, "Well, one, I grew up getting in fights and stuff all the time as a kid, so I was like, this isn't the first time I've been punched or going to punch somebody without a glove." And then two, I never went into any UFC fight, any MMA fight. I never looked at the other guy and was like, "Thank God he has that 4 ounce glove on," because
Oh, right.
there's tape and stuff under there, and like those things are padded. I think you can probably hit harder with the gloves than you can without.
Man, dude, that's nuts. I've done some boxing, some Muay Thai, man, and initially that flinch reflex would always get me. Like seeing a fist coming to me, it just like kind of. Have you ever seen that before in the gym? People like kind of freeze up a little bit.
Everybody does it. That's just a reaction thing that builds up. That comes from drilling and just training. Those, because I mean, I did it. I still every once in a while will flinch a little bit, and
Yeah.
then I'm like, but that's common. It goes away eventually. Just time.
Did you ever have to fight more than one individual at the same time? Just a random question.
In the ring?
No, no, like getting jumped like on the streets or in a confrontation where you're like, oh man.
Oh yeah. I mean, quite a few times.
Yeah.
It, it happens, I guess, growing up and being just a knucklehead and doing dumb stuff. But yeah, plenty of times.
Yeah, yeah. The reason I ask is because working in a prison, you're outnumbered. You're outnumbered probably 1 to like 800. At one time, 1 to 1,000. So
That's scary.
yeah, the odds are not cool. The odds are not cool, man. Um, how much stand up game or do you work all around? I know you're doing bare knuckle fighting now. So did you still training jujitsu?
Yeah, I do. So I'm a black belt in jiu-jitsu, and I love jiu-jitsu. So even training for bare knuckle fights sometimes or boxing, because I've kickboxed professionally too with Glory, which was back in the day was kind of like the UFC for kickboxing, their European promotion. Even then, like I do jiu-jitsu for cardio, but I also just love it. I think it's a good skill that everybody should have. I think
Right.
everybody's kid should do jiu-jitsu.
What age group do you think should start them off at? Like what age would be a good for a kid?
We start, at my gym, we start them off as early. Well, 5 is what we say. We've had some 4-year-olds come in. Like we just tell parents. There's some parents that are like, "Man, he really wants to do it, or she really wants to do it." We'll let them try it, and as long as they can like focus enough to not distract the whole class, because there's some kids out there. I don't want to say freaks because it's not like a negative thing, but they're like anomalies. I've seen 3-year-olds that will come in, sit there silently, watch, and like learn it.
Yeah.
My niece, my niece is 3 now, and she hangs out at the gym all the time because my whole family fights. Right, like my brother was in the
Oh,
UFC. My little brother, my sister-in-law fights professionally. She fought the same night as me actually this last Saturday. So their daughter comes to the gym every day with them, and she just sits over there, and now she knows how to do like arm bars and stuff,
sweet.
just from sitting watching. Like she used to sit in a stroller off the mat while her mom trained, and she's just grown up around it. Now she wants to like punch the bags and kick,
Nice.
and yeah, it's cool to see.
For sure, man. I hope to get my daughter and stuff like that. Do you ever watch like YouTube videos or news videos where you'll see a police officer wrestling around and struggling with a suspect, and does it frustrate you? And you're like, man, only if they knew how to do this one move, they could control this.
All the time, all the time, because I think that the more comfortable you are defending yourself in those altercations would help cut down on like shootings and stuff like that, because your gun should be your last resort. I'm not saying that um, anybody's wrong, like specifically in what they've done, but there's definitely scenarios where you can. It's the word I'm looking for. You can diffuse the situation like hand to hand, and not have to draw your weapon. So my brother is actually a Denver police officer now, and like I said, he was in the UFC. He's a brown belt in jiu-jitsu, and it's a big thing because like he's very comfortable with himself and like confident in his skills, and that goes a long way because even just if you're a police officer talking to people, if you're confident in yourself, like that confidence kind of radiates off, right?
For sure, for
Him and I
sure.
were talking about this, and people feel that, and they're like, well, you know, if you're nervous, they know you're nervous. And that's what makes people do stupid and crazy things. Or if the cop is nervous, then the suspect's probably nervous because he's like, man, he's got a gun. So I think, confidence does like radiate, and being confident in your ability to defend yourself is a very important thing.
You're right on that, man. I've seen every which way you can tell. I've seen a CO get angry and make the inmate get angry. You know what I mean? I've seen a CO get scared and then the inmate feeds off of that and just becomes like a predator and just feeds off of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, you know, my brother, I had him on my podcast not that long ago, and we were talking about it. And it is kind of weird that, like, to me, it baffles me if you're like a police officer or something and you don't train, because again, it could save your life. If you got a family to go home to. And it's kind of like being a police officer without ever practicing shooting, going to the range. Like, why would you do that? That's dangerous for you and for everybody else. So
Correct.
with cops being well trained, it also helps. You're somebody's backup. You might save somebody else's life too, like your partner or whatever. If you're not competent, then their life is in your hands too.
Man, I've been trying to say this for years, man, but nobody be listening to me. And here you are saying, hopefully they listen to you, man.
Yeah, and especially for like, prison guards and stuff, man. Like you said, you're outnumbered. You're not just outnumbered, but you guys aren't carrying weapons and stuff in there because you can't afford to have them taken.
Correct.
And it's a super dangerous situation. And there's so many things that you could learn fairly simply that could save your life, or like keep you out of danger, or like be able to hold off long enough to get help. And it's just putting in the time and effort to learn it and take it as part of your job.
Let's talk about that real quick. You said basic movement, basic, because I've done jiu-jitsu barely, like, beginner level. Is there a lot of entry level moves that can actually lead to somebody's success and, not getting injured?
Definitely. There's like the Gracie self-defense program. Probably, I mean, I don't mind saying it, whatever. There's certain parts of like the Gracie self-defense that I don't agree with, but there's a lot that I do. As basic as, if we do this at my gym sometimes. I'll do self-defense seminars and stuff, and I'll just grab somebody in a headlock and be like, what would you do here? Like the big brother, like over here, and people don't really know. And there's a lot of easy ways to like get out of that, like safely. Or, if somebody grabs you around the neck from behind and is trying to drag you, what are you going to do? Like things like that would come up for like prison guards and stuff. Somebody comes up behind you and grabs you. Even for women, there's techniques for, if somebody even stronger than you, it doesn't matter, grabs you by the wrist and is dragging you. We teach kids this stuff too, to help from like kids being abducted. There's just things that you can do, and you have to be able to think through it. And that doesn't come from, one thing about self-defense, I know I'm getting like way off here, that bothers me.
Cool. I like it.
So I do self-defense seminars, right? But I always start and end with telling people, like, I love that you came here. It's great. Doing this one seminar is not going to make you competent to do this. This is to open up your eyes to these things, and you can do them, but you should either sign up here or wherever. Like
Right.
I'm not trying to just go to my gym, but this is a continued knowledge thing, right? Again, you can't go to the range and shoot one time and be like, yeah, I'm a good shooter. You practice over and over.
Not only that, it's a perishable skill, man. You don't shoot for a long period of time, you're going back to square one.
Oh yeah, same. Like if I've taken time off fights from injuries and stuff, had to take a couple months, my day back in the gym, like my reactions are off, my timing is off, I feel terrible about it. And it takes time to get back into that, like everything's in sync. So it's super perishable.
For sure. Do you carry that mindset when you go to walk around the mall, the streets? Are you always on alert with your head on a swivel, or what goes through your mind?
Yeah, quite a bit. I mean, I've done a lot of EP work and stuff, I still do here and there. So a lot of like situational awareness, which is stuff I teach too. There's, for instance, like one thing we teach at self-defense seminars, there's a fun game you could play with like your kids, right? They won't even know what you're really teaching them, but they'll find it fun. Next time you're walking around with your daughter, just start asking her questions like, hey, if you're at the park, like, what's the kid on the slide? What color is their shirt? And they're gonna have to like look at first, but then they're gonna get like into this game, right? So then they're gonna start paying attention, waiting for you to ask a question so that they know the answer. Things like that. Like, what color was that car that just drove by? That way, I'm looking at you, but I can also like use my peripheral. How many people just walked in the door of the restaurant we're sitting at? But you make it fun, like maybe reward her for getting it right or
Yeah,
things
that's
like,
awesome.
because then they'll start doing it like without even thinking about it. And then they're paying attention more. Nowadays, people are walking around
Yeah,
head down, looking at their phone.
right.
And yeah, there's a lot of situations, you could pay attention to walking down the street at night. If there's like a group of guys or somebody looks shady over here, if you see it, just cross the street.
Yeah,
Maybe you go out of your way a little bit, but it takes an extra 2 minutes. But who knows what could have happened?
correct.
Paying attention to things is super important. So yeah, I kind of walk around like that all the time. I challenge myself with it. I try to see if I can like know what everybody's wearing around, and like I'll quiz myself and try to go through it.
That's awesome, dude. Now I'll do the same with my daughter. If we're walking down a sidewalk and there's a driveway, I'll tell her, "Hey, look into the driver's seat because there could be somebody in there and they'll reverse and run you over." So she'll be looking for lights and stuff.
Yeah, stuff like that, and like I'm sure people listening to this can come up with other ways. You just make
Oh
it
yeah,
fun for them. Don't get like a berating thing, like, oh, you didn't know. And then from there, they just like grow from it and like start paying attention. I'm big on not sitting in parking lots at night. I tell my girlfriend that all the time. Like, don't get in your car or pull up somewhere, then sit in your car on your phone. Like those are bad spots to be in. Like, if you're there, get out, get in. Like, you don't want to be caught just sitting in the dark in your car.
You know what I like about you saying that, man, is the fact that you're fully capable of defending yourself, man, and even getting the upper hand. Yet you don't put yourself in positions that are gonna, be detrimental to your safety and security, man. That to me is even more and above and beyond, dude.
Oh, thank you. I think it's an ego thing too, right? Like, I don't walk around being like, oh, I fight people professionally. There's
Right.
a group of people up here that looks like they're causing trouble. I'm just going to walk through them. I'm like, man, I'll just cross the street. I'm not trying to. I get paid to fight. I'm not trying to do it for free.
Hell yeah, dude. I like that. I like that mentality, man.
Yeah, I mean, I think it goes a long way. I that's why teaching kids and stuff is really fun. Like, those little things could one day save them from being kidnapped or whatever.
Real quick, along this same topic, do you look at what people are wearing, maybe a hoodie, and do you start envisioning yourself doing moves like, okay, I can grab onto this sleeve or grab onto this if I get attacked?
Oh yeah, I mean, there's when you do jujitsu, like there's so many things like, especially gi jiu-jitsu, I think is great for self-defense because the gi, it's thicker to train with, so it doesn't tear. But I can do all the same chokes on a t-shirt, on a collared shirt. When I used to bounce, the club that I worked at was like a higher end club, and they'd have us wear suits. So I used to wear. I didn't buy nice suits, that's for sure, because they get ripped up all the time. And
Yeah,
I'd wear clip-on ties. And a lot of guys would wear regular ties, but I mean, I'd choke you with that. Like a tie, when you grab it and pull it, it's the knot cinches. So my tie, when people grabbed it, it would just come off. Taking those things out, because I also think about it from my end. Like, how can I get hit, with this? There's a bunch of different ways. Sleeves, you can control somebody by sleeves. And also for like weapons and stuff, paying attention. If somebody's not dressed right for the occasion, maybe it's summertime, some guy walks in like a big trench coat or big like furry coat, that stands out, right? There's a
right.
reason, or that's abnormal. So then instantly I'm like, all right, well, that's kind of weird. That
It's
makes you
funny.
pay attention more.
It's funny you should say that, man, because I worked in the desert at a prison where it'd get 115 easily in the summer, and there would be dude wearing big coats, and that would strike me like, oh man, it's kind of sketchy.
Yeah, like what do they have in there? What do you need that for? That's not comfortable.
Yeah. Dude, so it's been awesome, like picking your brain and stuff. Where can you tell us again where people can get a hold of you, the app that you're on, and that way people can connect with you, man.
Yeah, definitely. So I'm probably most active on Instagram, and
Oh,
that's at Chris Camozzi MMA. So it's Camozzi. And then my app, Jiu Jitsu on the Go, that's available on Android, Apple, all of those. And what you can do is you download it, but it's even available. You can download videos off there. So if you want to watch them on a flight or you don't have service or whatnot, but we've got forums on there so you can ask questions on there. And myself or one of the other coaches, we do requests, if people are like, what do you do in this situation? Like, we'll make a video and show you.
Oh, sweet, dude.
So it's a lot of fun. It's constantly growing. I mean, we add content all the time. It's not just, so my coach, Steve Hordinsky, and I own it, but the cool thing about it is it's not just him and I teaching on there. I got people from all over the world up to like red belts in jiu-jitsu. There's only a few in the world teaching on there. And we found so many cool people that want to like share their content with everybody, and they let us just upload it on there so that people can learn from anywhere.
Nice. Are you on YouTube also? I know you were talking about a podcast.
Yeah. So my podcast is called Involuntary Yoga. That's kind of a pun on jiu-jitsu. So
yeah,
what involuntary yoga, what that means is kind of like, I'm going to make you bend when you don't want to.
Right.
So I'm going to fold your clothes with you in them. Just kind of a funny thing, but it's called Involuntary Yoga, and that's on the Fit Soda Media YouTube page. So I have a part in this company, and I work for Fit Soda, and I'm in our podcast studio right now. We have a really cool setup. We do a ton of like content stuff, and then we also sell Fit Soda. So it's a healthy alternative to soda. There's no sugar, there's no calories, there's no artificial flavoring or coloring. It has BCAAs and electrolytes in it. So you can find me at all those places.
Sweet. There you go, guys. Go tap in. I'm going to have the links on the bottom. Hey, you guys need to get your ass in shape. For real. That's it. It can save your life, right? You heard it from the best right here. And hey, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was going to say, there's a free trial on the app, right? So you can do a week free trial, see if you like it. If you don't, delete it.
I already like it, man.
Run through everything on there.
Cool, dude. Well, thank you for being on the show, man. It was a pleasure. Really enjoyed picking your brain, bro.
Hey, this is fun. Let's do it again sometime. I'll have to have you on mine too.
For sure, dude. So go ahead and stay on. I'm going to close it out real quick.
Perfect.
There you guys go. Man, sign up for his app, right? Plug in, connect, keep pushing forward.